very much for the invitation, and it's a privilege to go first today. It sounds like a fantastic program that's been organised. I'm going to do the first bit of the presentation, then I'm going to hand over to Karen, who's going to talk about the sort of the more factual and financial stuff, and then we'll wrap up at the end and hopefully have some time for questions. But I thought the very first thing I should do, he says, putting his slides up. I thought the very first thing I should do is to tell you where I'm speaking from, where the Calder Valley is. Yes, we're in West Yorkshire. We're actually in the heart of the Pennines. There's a view of Todmorden. There's a view of Hebden Bridge. There's a view which we'd rather not be reminded of, which was the floods on Boxing Day 2015. And I have to say, we're now at the moment in an amber flood alert. So everyone is very much on tenterhooks up here. We're just hoping we get through the next 48 hours. And if you've seen various programs on television recently, Happy Valley or Last Tango in Halifax or Gentleman Jack, you'll know our landscape. So that's where we are, West Yorkshire. Our story goes back to 2013, 2014. In the usual way, a group of people sat around the table and said, well, what if we do this? How would it work? How could we get this going? And we were very inspired by other CLTs which had been doing great things at that point. So we've learned very much from within the movement. And I think the idea of sharing our experiences is a really important one. We are a community benefit society, and you'll gather later on why that's important. We are a charity. We have no staff at the moment. We are entirely trustee-led, and our 11 trustees do work quite hard on the CLT. We are a member organisation. We chose to be a member organisation, and we have something like 170 local people who've signed up and have bought a £1 share in the society to support what we're trying to do. And we're also, and this is slightly unusual, we have chosen to become a registered provider of social housing. So we are, if you like, equivalent to a tiny housing association. And if people are interested, we could mention a bit about why we've done that in the questions and answers afterwards. Took us a lot of talking, a lot of meeting, but we finally got our first development there. This is in a village called Walsden. You can see at the top picture what the land looked like before we moved in, or before our contractors moved in. And below you can see the opening ceremony when the bungalows were finished. This was 6 independent living bungalows for older people who were living in the community. Construction began March 2019, and phew, we just, in the nick of time, managed to complete the build before COVID came along. We got our new tenants into their bungalows the second week in March, so you can see how fortunate we were to just manage to achieve that. We chose to become a registered provider, an RP, because we wanted the bungalows we'd put a lot of time and energy into constructing, a lot of effort. We wanted them to stay in the CLT's ownership and under our control. And being an RP, and there are points for and against, but being an RP means that we are the landlord of the tenants and the properties are ours. Our second development was planned to be in Hebden Bridge. There's an old map from way back. You can see the dense terraced housing. We have so-called back-to-backs up here, which are sort of houses which have got one house at the back of another. That's what it looked like in the 1960s, Bridge Lanes. That's what it looks like now. The houses were demolished during slum clearance. And this was our vision for what we wanted to put there, which was a new row of about 20 houses on a site which had once had housing, so bringing housing back. We had lots of public consultations, and we were well advanced in really quite an ambitious plan for a community share issue of £500,000, which I think would have been the largest that any community-led housing group has managed to raise. And we worked quite hard towards the community share issue, which we were planning for 2019. We had an event to encourage supporters and friends to make early pledges to the community share issue. There was no legal commitment here, no legal obligation, but nonetheless it gave us an indication of who might be prepared to put money into the CLT, investment money, not donations, investment money. And we did quite well. We got 150,000 in pledges, and we also knew that we had another 200,000 we could reach from other sources. And we also did a series of public meetings in preparation for the share issue, not just for that. I mean, I think the public meetings were valuable in their own right. The theme was housing, it's an issue. And the idea was to try and bring housing back up the agenda so that people were more concerned about the significant housing crisis which we've got here and I think the whole country has got. So in 2018 we had 5 public meetings on a range of issues, well attended and I think very successful. I think we would think about doing that again in the time ahead. So that was our plan and everything was going fine. And then we went to planning and a complete surprise, the planning committee turned us down on a majority vote of councillors. That was a surprise to us. It was a surprise to the planning officers who were supporting the application, and it was a surprise to the majority party in our local authority who were also supporting what we were doing. But these things sometimes happen. So that share issue had to be put on hold at that point. We're talking 2019, early 2019. But having not been able to go ahead with our original plans for a share issue, another opportunity arose just this last year. And this was what we have called the Fielden Acre Project. We were gifted, because we're a charitable trust, we were gifted way back in 2015 a local community centre. And if you look at the top photo, you'll see that the red circle shows the community centre. It's an old school hall, an old village. I mean, it's obviously a Victorian school building, you can tell that. So we were delighted, we've been delighted to be the legal custodian for the community centre. But if you look at the photos, you'll also see that there are 2 buildings on either side of that. These are residential housing, and there's also land attached, which we weren't gifted. Now, last year we gathered that the houses and the land were about to be put on the market, and we felt this was an opportunity we just couldn't miss. We felt that if we didn't try and get hold of the whole site, we would regret it in the future. But we reckoned we needed about 430,000. So we went with a share issue. We finally launched our community share issue. Target was 270. We had an online launch. Of course, we would have had a proper launch had we been able to, but it was fine. We had about 70 there. We were able to ask Kevin Doyle, who's maybe not a household name to you, but you will have seen him on a number of television programs, including Downton Abbey. I spelled that wrong, haven't I? Sorry about that. And we chose to use FX as the platform for our share launch, and there's the share offer document. How did we get on from October last year? Well, we got there. I'm pleased to say we're still sort of slightly stunned and glowing inside at the fact that we did actually manage to reach not just the minimum target, but the maximum we were aiming for, which was the full 270,000. And that came from over 120 individual investors, putting in everything from 250 quid to 20,000. 250 was the minimum. I can explain why, if you're interested, why we set it at 250, and 20,000 was the maximum. And again, I can explain why we set it at 20,000. You can see we had lots of banners and things. There's one of the banners outside the building below, and on the right, that's the website which FX, the Ethical Exchange website, ran for us. And the arrangement is that shares attract 2% interest each year. Although there is an option for those who choose to choose no interest or a reduced interest of 1%. I've sped through that. I'm now going to hand over to Karen.
Yes, what I'm going to do is I wanted the more boring bit. I don't have beautiful pictures. I do have 2 pie charts, which might enliven the situation. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about community shares because I'm sure they'll be discussed throughout the day, and it'll be useful for you to have a bit of background. So this is a bit of technical stuff, Okay, so community shares is withdrawable share capital, and when it goes on your balance sheet, it's investment, it's equity. So these are people who are investing in your organisation. And that was another reason why we became a community benefit society, because we are able to raise community shares. And you can see they're only issued by cooperative societies, community benefit societies, and a charitable community benefit society, which is what we are. So if you're trying to fund your development, community shares is absolutely a brilliant way, and I'll pick up a bit on this later, because it's actually not just about money. It's as much, in fact more, about engaging with the community and getting the community buy-in in more ways than one. So that's emotional as well as financial. And if you raise community shares, you can also get funding from the booster programme. And I have more information about these organisations as I go through. And my slides give you web addresses, etc. So we'll get there. But the interesting thing about the booster programme, which is a co-op booster programme, and you can see there, communitysharesbooster.org. They will not just give you matched investment, but they will give you grants to help you prepare the share offer. And for us, for Fielden Acre, that was absolutely invaluable. That really helped us develop all our documentations and really made it successful. So next one. Okay, so these are other funding options for raising investments, okay? And I've put these in so you can, you know, so these are options for you if you're wanting to raise investment. So we got money from the REACH fund, and that is part of the social investment business. And again, this is all preparatory work. This will help you raise your investment, and you can get between 5,000 and 15,000. And there's their websites. I was on a Power to Change call a couple of weeks ago, and they have what's called the Reboost Fund. They're also giving lots of investment for other things, COVID related, etc. But they also do this Reboost Fund, which is about community businesses raising community shares to aid recovery from COVID. And they have quite a variety of funding. So it's worth looking at that as well. Next. Okay, so this is about the community shares unit and the standard mark. And I think somebody put it in chat early. Everything you ever want to know about community shares, go to the community shares website. And that gives lots of information. The community shares unit, as it stands, is this joint initiative between Co-ops UK and locality. And they're just trying to raise awareness, support community owned businesses, etc. And one of the things it does is promoting good practice. And one of the aspects of good practice is the standard mark. And we went down the standard mark route. And it helps you if you're actually trying to raise large sums of money. We did the standard mark route for our Fielden Acre one, but our what we call the Pioneer shares launch, which was for our Walsden development, where we just to be blunt, tapped into friends, tapped into people who had already said they were interested. We didn't do a standard mark. Standard mark takes a lot of work, but you can get funding to do it, and it pays dividends because it demonstrates that you are financially viable, that people who are investing in you, you know, are sort of pretty confident that you will succeed. You get an independent assessment by a licensed practitioner. And essentially it tells you about the quality of the community share offer. And the community shares unit only promote offers that have the mark. And I mean, we recommend that you do that. And if you use FX as an investment platform, then they also require you to be. I think it's true to say they don't support you unless you actually have the standard mark. I think that's true, isn't it, Andrew?
I don't think it is actually.
Okay, well, it should be. I thought it was, but I will be told that I'm wrong. Okay. Now then, one of the things that you have to think about if you're going down a community shares route is how you're going to advertise it. And of course, for our pioneer shares, as I say, we just tapped our friends. But the point about FX is that you go national. And across the country, I mean, we were quite surprised. We worried as to whether we should be launching our share offer in October, in the middle of a COVID pandemic, just before Christmas, because we would be crossing Christmas. Is this a good time to launch? And in fact, it turned out it was a brilliant time to launch because people were all a bit fed up. This was a good news story. Banks were giving virtually no interest at all. And people actually even bought community shares for Christmas presents for people. So we were actually quite lucky. And though most of our investors are local, we did get national investors, and we got large national investors. We did get 1 or 2, 20,000, 10,000, etc. So what FX does, and I recommend if you're interested in community shares or raising funds, go to the FX website, and they give you a range. So everybody who's trying to raise community shares has got the information on the site, and it has a share offer document, it has the business plan, etc. And it means you can read all about the investment potential, and FX manage the whole process. Okay, so it really helped us enormously, that. And also they provide a registry function. So after you've done your FX, community shares, you've reached the target, then they hold all the information about the people. They will also help you look after the investment down the line. We've chosen to do it ourselves, and if you want to know about it, we can tell you in question and answer. Okay, so how did we get the money to support putting up this share offer? Because as I said, it's quite a big job, and you have to get it right. So very quickly, Homes England, and this is another reason for being a registered provider, not only are you the landlord, but you can get grants direct from Homes England. They will pay you a grant, and we got for Fielden Acre £110,000 from Homes England. They also pay for feasibility studies, and by the by, we're still looking at the High Street scheme that got refused planning permission, and we've got a significant sum of money, over £50,000, to do lots more feasibility work and surveys, etc. From Homes England. So that's one of the advantages of being a registered provider. Anyway, they gave us some funding for feasibility studies. In other words, we're able to get condition surveys, valuation, etc. done using that money. Booster Fund, which I mentioned earlier, helped us with the preparation of community shares. They gave us 10,000, and that was all about the business side. So we paid somebody to do all the business analysis, to prepare the business plans, etc., for the share offer. And coincidentally, because we're a registered provider, we have to do all sorts of things for the regulator. And one of the things we're spot on doing business plans. So we did our organisation business plan at the same time. So that was really helpful. It helped towards the independent assessment of the standard mark, as I said. It also funded the £5,000 FX hosting fees, and paid for lots of different materials, marketing materials. So, you know, like all the e-leaflets, we had banners, we had videos, we had website development, all manner of things. And then Reach, who had given us this money for our earlier scheme, also let us carry it forward. So they paid for the external marketing team. We used Leeds Community Homes, and they were fantastic. Highly recommend them. Also more marketing, etc. Okay, so that's the sort of the finance side. Just briefly, how we got on in our organisation. As I said, it's really, really important that you know what you're trying to do. What is your story? And we had a really quite interesting and diverse team. So we in our organisation, because we have no paid staff and we've got loads of projects going on, etc. We have task groups. So, so they, you know, these people, you know, we've got a housing management task group, we've got a task group just trying to steer through High Street. We had a whole task group, which was the Fielden Acre task group, which was steering through every aspect, not just the community shares, but the raising of the other funds that we were getting, that were looking at issues around tenancies, etc. So we had a task group of consultants. We employed a business consultant with some of our money that we were given. We had marketing consultants, as I said, Leeds Community Homes, and the IT support person. So that was our team. The share offer standard mark, it had loads about business planning, our financial statements, and by that I mean you have to produce a 5-year set of financial statements which include cash flow, income and expenditure, and balance sheet. Sorry, Andrew, can you just pop back to that one? I know you're rushing me through. And then finally, because this is the most important bit, and Andrew and I attended a call a week ago where we were all talking about our community launch. And one of the organisations there, who I won't name, they might be here today, they might reiterate that story, actually didn't get their story right. They focused on raising money and they didn't make it, so they had to relaunch. So our story was about the heritage of Todmorden, this important building which is listed, and how we were going to take over the whole of the building and the land, etc. And that really attracted people's attention. And our video was about and our little tiny videos was all about heritage. So that was how we told the story. And you saw the logo that Andrew had on some of his slides. That was part of the marketing material. So we had branding, you know, we had all manner of things. So it's really important that you get your story right and that you get your marketing. Now then, this is an interesting slide about how we funded our first scheme, which was the 6 bungalows. And there's 2 reasons for showing you this. I think the first thing, it's always, when I did this, it was for an annual general meeting, just to tell people I was spending our money. It was only when I put it up that I realised how difficult it is to fund social housing. It is really, really difficult. And I think this pie chart tells you how difficult it is. And sitting in this pie chart, you can see is all of our, you know, grants, loans, etc. But there is our £94,000 worth of equity, which is the 10%, which is our community share. So you can see how important those community shares were. And they came right at the end when the cost started to rise and we needed to look at alternative ways of funding. Okay, right. And then this is how we funded Fielden Acre. And you can see that the community shares here are about half. There's the booster fund, which is the match funding, which is 50,000. FFC is Calder Valley Foundation for charities, and they were prepared to offer us a loan of £220,000. And it's a short-term loan, in other words, over 5 years, interest only, and then we're going to pay it back after 5 years with more community shares is the plan. But as you see, we only needed 50,000 because we made our full ration of community shares, and the match funding, the booster shares, in fact, that is also investment, and it is Co-ops UK who only have one vote, even though they're invested 50,000. So they're an investor as well. And then you can see the Homes England grant as well. So that's so you can see it complements all your other funding mechanisms. And for Fielden Acre, it was half. It was really, really important. So Andrew, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Very quickly, I mean, we do feel very positive about community shares as a way of raising some of the funding that you need, some of the investment capital you need for a community-led housing scheme. It's patient capital. It strengthens, we feel it really strengthens the CLT, not just in terms of the money coming in, but actually in terms of the base we have in our community. The fact we now have well over 100 people who support what we do, and not only support what we do, but have put their own money into that. So to be a to launch community shares, you do need to be a community benefit society. If you're not there, then it's really a question of loan finance rather than share capital. But if you are a community benefit society, we strongly recommend it. Our experience has been a positive one. And at that point, I'm going to come to the last slide.